Hey everybody, it's Dana. At least I think I'm live. Yep. I wanted to have a little discussion about a couple of experiences that I've had in the last several days with people. One in particular was a dog that basically quit eating, and the owner got really concerned about that, and likely you would as well. We should be. He just refused to eat, and what he had been eating previously started to upset his stomach. And so she, of course, went to the vet, and initially they said there was nothing wrong, right? And so what did they want to do? Standard MO of a chicken bland diet kind of thing, and antibiotics or steroids or whatever is the common go-to, right? I don't think this dog in this case got any particular medication, but it's not uncommon to sort of fling stuff at a problem we don't understand what's going on. So I was contacted because they are feeders of Volhard and asked about some options. And long story short, you know me, or if you don't, you're going to figure it out. I ask a whole bunch of other questions before I tend to give an opinion, or offer any possible suggestions as to what might happen or what might need to happen. And it turns out that this dog had been on a 3-week round of a very heavy duty antibiotic. So almost 21 days of a very heavy duty antibiotic. And the reason for that turns out to have been that there had been some unwell conditions in this dog for a very long time. And changing the food some time ago, quite some time ago, made a tremendous amount of improvement, but there was never really a complete resolution, if that makes sense. There's something not quite healthy about the dog. And this is one reason I ask people to stay in touch with me. Not that I can make a diagnosis or a treatment plan, but I can certainly maybe question things or send you to question things that might come up with answers. But it was determined that this dog had MRSA. And so he was given this very heavy duty round of antibiotics. And friends, I'll tell you that there are alternatives, right? There are alternatives to these heavy duty antibiotics, even when we find ourselves in sort of a panic. And it is hard if you are not confident in what's possible with essential oils and homeopathy and natural approaches. It is hard to trust that they will work when you hear some of these difficult or complex diagnoses, right? So I get it, I understand. But the theory then became his gut health was completely jacked up, completely derailed. And every time he ate, it made him sick. He was hungry, but if he ate, it made him sick for a few days. And then he just said, I'm not eating because everything I eat isn't going well. So it was suggested to do chicken and rice. You saw the vet say it, and you saw every dog mama on her post suggest it. Try chicken and rice, try chicken and rice, try chicken and rice. And I don't do that, right? And there's a couple of reasons why I don't do that, even when my dogs are sick and we're desperate to try and find something for them to eat. The reasons being is that I've told you in the past that chicken is an inflammatory food. So if your dog's gut is already inflamed, if it's already on fire, unhappy, we don't need to throw fuel on that fire, right? We know that chicken can be a good protein source in general, but not if we're already inflamed, right? And so this is part of looking at the bigger piece of the puzzle, not just my dog's not eating. We have to make some assessments as to why the dog is not eating. And it's because his gut health is destroyed. 21 days of this heavy duty antibiotic killed off all bacteria, right? And the gut was just really unhappy. So how do we ease our way back into restoration? And I'll share with you my thoughts on that in a second. So no chicken, because we're already on fire. You can look at ground beef, ground turkey, ground pork, things of that nature. In this case, I would cook them. I would do a light cook and take the fats away for a few days only. But I wouldn't start with a raw diet in that scenario. Why not rice? Rice is extremely high in carbohydrates. And so what happens is most people use a lot of rice and a fair amount of chicken, and we put in a ton of carbohydrate into the belly, right? And what happens when we do that, the pancreas has to gear itself up to process all those carbohydrates. So carbohydrates can create a pancreatic flare just like fats could. So I don't suggest that we throw a ton of carbohydrates into the digestive system and force it to work harder to digest what we just put in there than is necessary. Carbohydrates are also creating some inflammation. While it does offer us some vitamins and minerals, it's not enough to be considered nutrient rich. It might offer a little bit of fiber, which we do need fiber when we're restarting that gut health in the digestive system so that things don't get clogged up when we start putting food back in there. But it's just not necessarily the best choice to get nutrient into the body. That same carbohydrate, that same, carbohydrate that's going in can also create a spike in the glycemic index, meaning, yet again, the pancreas is working harder to control the sugar intake, right? So what do I use? When my dogs, if they were to quit eating, and you may recall back in the summer that Howie got a little fussy about his foods, so I will go to bone broth. We need to keep the dogs hydrated. They can go for days without eating. And often fasting is a very good thing to help the gut health heal. Sometimes it does not need food to give it a chance to heal a little bit before we start putting food back in. That's incredibly difficult for pet parents, for dog mamas to go, my dog isn't eating, I need him to eat. I had a client last weekend, not this past one, but 2 weekends ago, call me and said, my dog's not eating. And it turned out he had missed one meal. One meal. I'm like, oh my goodness. So sometimes our dogs will choose to self-fast because they know putting something else in there is not going to feel good. So fasting is not a bad thing. They do have to take in water. Your dog can go for days without food, but needs water every day. It's the most that we would want them to not have hydration is a day or two, right? So when I'm trying to sort of restart things, I'll start with bone broth, which is incredibly nutrient rich. Now, you can make, in most cases, bone broth at home easily. There are some that you might be able to purchase, but you do not want stock. You don't want like chicken stock or beef stock, where it's just the water left from cooking the protein source. What we're after is cooking down those bones so much, the bone so much that all that bone marrow and the collagen and all the things that are in those bone and in the cartilage around them are released into this water. We also add things like, and this is where you might not get the right ingredients in a store-bought bone broth, but we add things like fresh ground ginger, which soothes the gut, soothes the bowel, helps with resolution to digestive upset. So think about all those times somebody said, drink a ginger ale, eat a ginger snap cookie, take in some ginger. It's the same principle. Kale adds vitamin B, A, C, K, and iron. Celery is very draining to the systems of the body. So think the lymphatic systems and getting some drainage going. It also adds vitamin C. Shiitake mushrooms are great to put in there. They are helpful to support fighting cancer in our animals. Carrots are very good for the eyes. They add beta carotene, and they're also good for liver health, which is important when we're trying to restart that digestive system, right? Parsley is said to be a blood tonic and also high in vitamin C. So nutrient rich, helping the blood circulate, do its job better, carry nutrients through to all the right places. When we do this preparation, we put all those ingredients in, like a crock pot, for example. We put our bones in there, and you can go to the butcher and grab big marrow bones. You can get cartilage joints that have the cartilage attached to them still, so that'll release. And you put all that in a pot with a couple of inches of water, and you're going to let it cook down for about 24 hours. But you also need to add something acidic like apple cider vinegar, like raw apple cider vinegar. And that helps get into those bones and have it release out the vitamins and minerals that are in there. So many dogs, when you offer this, even when they look like they're not eating, will drink this, right? And the nutrient going in to help them keep that nutrient-rich element will eventually help them feel better as well. And so even with Howie, who did not have a disease other than he's old, and started to, for whatever reason, had a little round of digestive upset this past summer, this was something he could tolerate. So that's where I start, trying to keep him hydrated and keep some nutrition going in. I'll take a minute and say bone broth is not a balanced meal, right? This is not something that you would do for an extended period of time. It is just sort of that we need to keep them hydrated. We need to get some nutrition in them if we can, and then begin over a couple of days later to start to introduce real foods again. If you're doing this, my suggestion is, if your dog is already fasted, already showing you digestive upset, already sort of off the rails, and you're rebuilding gut health, your best options would be to move to a whole food, fresh diet. Whether that is something like the fresh proteins and the mix of Volhard, or you're preparing a meal at home, you have an opportunity to really help heal your dog's gut. And it's not going to happen quickly. This particular dog, in my opinion, is going to need digestive enzymes and probiotics for a very long time. It's been shown that it can take, and I've heard anywhere between 8 and 18 months, depending on who you ask, to rebuild gut health. It does not happen overnight. So digestive enzymes, probiotic, prebiotic foods, all of those things are going to be really important to help this gut heal and become healthy again. All right. So next time you see somebody who's saying, hey, my dog's not eating, or we just got out of surgery, or whatever it may be, and everybody's suggesting chicken and rice, or even you might be suggesting chicken and rice, reconsider that. Consider that there are some other options to begin to move your way forward. And then we can certainly talk about options of what foods to introduce next. But bone broth's a good way to maybe keep them hydrated, get some nutrient in, even when the dog is choosing to self fast because they just don't feel good. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about that.